Hello, today is Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. I'm Joe Schmidt with TC2, and this is Staying Connected. Okay, so first, we hope everyone is staying healthy, and like us here at TC2 and LB3, you are looking forward to the days ahead when the effects of this nasty virus have subsided. Many of you are probably working from home or away from the office and realize just how dependent you and your family are on your internet connection. What's interesting is that enterprises in the last few years are also transforming how they architect their networks, and they have increasingly adopted an internet-first strategy. Companies that have gone down this path have seen a massive and favorable impact on the affordability and performance of their networks. It's also changing how they buy their transport and what suppliers they use. Joining me today is Mark Sheard, TC2's UK Managing Director. Mark is one of our evangelists for the Internet First philosophy. And today we're going to talk about how you can develop a portfolio strategy when buying your internet transport services. This podcast will be part one of a two-part series. Mark, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Joe, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, so before we start, do you have any work from home tips that you'd like to share?
I wasn't expecting that. I guess as an organization that's been working that way for more than 20 years, off the top of my head, I'd say take advantage of the flexibility, but try and put some structure around your day, particularly, when you start and when you finish. And then I guess on top of that, it'd be make sure you take some breaks from the workstation.
All right, great. Thanks, Mark. So, Mark, what exactly is the portfolio strategy?
Yes, Joe, I'm talking about a strategy that can save you an additional 30% and beyond on your internet transport costs. And you did hear that correctly. That's increasing the savings by more than 30% versus a single supplier approach for your internet transport. And that's over and above, having made savings against MPLS. And what's really important in this is at the same time, it can promote ongoing performance benefit with your network transport providers. So if you look at this, what do you have to do? Well, one is you've already selected your SD-WAN solution. I'm not going to talk about that today, and perhaps we can have another podcast on that soon. Two, you've decided how much MPLS you're keeping. Again, that's out of scope for today, but that may be none, or you may be keeping a substantial MPLS inventory. And three, for the rest of your future state network, the enterprise now needs to source the right mix of internet transport. And here I'm specifically referring to high quality, often high bandwidth, synchronous dedicated internet access, or DIA as it's known. So it has robust availability SLAs, and it's a solid enterprise grade service.
So let me inject something here just so that we're clear. We're not talking about broadband services like DSL that typically has different upload and download speeds, and it doesn't come with SLAs. Now, broadband does work with an SD-WAN solution, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Yes, that's right. Depending on the use cases, broadband has a great role to play, but DIA is much more robust and can still bring significant savings versus current MPLS costs. We'll get into more detail on the broadband, LTE, and other transport technologies when we record our next SD-WAN podcast. For this DIA-centric view, what you've really got in terms of sourcing it is a spectrum, broadly three ways to go. You can go single supplier globally or even regionally, but this can result in higher cost overall, the highest cost, potential coverage challenges or gaps in the coverage of provision of circuits to your sites, and truthfully, often performance complacency. One of the other options, number two, is going for the lowest cost provider sourcing. Here, though, you can get operational inconsistencies and lower responsiveness from having lots of suppliers, having a much higher management overhead and perhaps substandard account support. Now, this is the supposed route to the lowest cost, and the reality is even this degrades over time when you've had a mix of sort of heterogeneous suppliers. And to be honest, there's also a lack of leverage in terms of contract and support terms. The third option, which is really what we're recommending and talking about as the way forward, is the optimized portfolio of suppliers. This is the recommended way to strike the balance between high coverage confidence, dramatically reduced cost versus single source, and manageability of your supplier mix. The supplier portfolio needs to be optimized, though, for the enterprise's specific needs.
So what are some of those specific needs?
There'd be things such as the scale in terms of the volume of circuits, what your global footprint is, and within that, what the specific country distribution is, the size and bandwidth of your circuits, the type of those circuits, and also things like the resilience and diversity preferences that you've got for your circuits and sites. The optimization of the portfolio factors into your assessment what your network start point is and where you want to get to, and considers the incumbents and non-incumbents that might best contribute to your future state network. We always work this through with clients, adding our specific and substantial market knowledge of who is best to consider when they're making those choices. Importantly, this optimization also carefully models the various ways you can allocate circuits to different suppliers. Our modeling tool, for example, can quickly step through multiple cherry-picking scenarios based on cost and coverage. And here, coverage is being the ability to cost-effectively provide circuits where you need them. And the end result of this modeling and this assessment is a selection of a portfolio of suppliers, all of whom you will contract with and who will be your go-to partners for the next 3 years. Essentially, what you're going to get is a small portfolio of chosen suppliers that will give you immediate cost reductions compared to perhaps using 1 or 2 suppliers in your sourcing. And this portfolio also strikes the balance between low cost and manageability.
Mark, a few years ago, the one throat to choke approach to buying transport was in vogue with many of our clients. Now that approach, it was meant to simplify sourcing, network transport, and MPLS. It did seem to be the monolithic network solution they all needed. This portfolio strategy changes that in a big way.
Yes, it does. And frankly, enterprises need to adapt their approaches depending on circuit inventory, the volume and geography that I mentioned. Typically, you want at least 2 providers per region who essentially compete for your ongoing business. So it's not just at the time of the RFP, it's all the way through that frame contract, for want of a better term. Common outcomes for larger enterprises are selecting a couple of global providers and perhaps 1 or 2 regional providers, aiming in effect to have coverage in each region where you've got 2 or 3 players that you can go through as your partners for that region. What this means is not only a great outcome in terms of total cost for your initial rollout, it also means you've enhanced the likely coverage in terms of availability when you need it going forward. And what's really important is that it promotes perpetual provider provisioning, price, performance pressure. A lot of alliteration in there, but it's just a catchphrase to see the benefits you can get from this. And it promotes that competition and that pressure between suppliers where the ones who strive to meet your needs are the ones that will ultimately get the best rewards from you. So it gives them a carrot. It works for the suppliers because they know that they are the first port of call for your circuit requirements, and that if they deliver in terms of that provisioning and price and service performance, they can win more business.
Okay, we know from helping our clients that there are significant benefits gained by adopting this approach, and you're probably wondering, how do you actually make it happen? Well, Mark and I will cover that on the second part of this series, so stay tuned. In the meantime, if you are developing an internet-first strategy and you would like to discuss that with Mark, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues, please give us a call or drop us an email. And you can stay current by checking out our websites, subscribing to these podcasts, or by following us on LinkedIn.